At 83, Paul McCartney speaks not with the urgency of youth, but with the calm clarity of someone who has lived several lifetimes inside one. His reflections today are not confessions meant to shock, but thoughtful acknowledgments shaped by decades of experience. When McCartney looks back on his life and the artists who influenced him, he does so with humility and gratitude rather than drama. Fame, he has learned, magnifies everything: success, loss, joy, and regret. Time strips away mythology and leaves behind memory. In this quieter stage of life, Paul's words carry weight because they are unforced. His perspective is no longer about legacy building, but about understanding. When he speaks about fellow musicians like Ricky Nelson, it is not to rewrite history, but to humanize it. What emerges is not a revelation, but a recognition. That influence often travels silently, shaping artists long before the world ever notices. Growing up with music and loss. Paul McCartney was born in Liverpool in 1942 into a working-class family shaped by the realities of post-war Britain. Music surrounded him early, thanks to his father's love for jazz and popular standards, but it was hardship that gave his creativity emotional depth. The death of his mother when he was 14 left a wound that never fully healed, yet it also sharpened his sensitivity as a songwriter. Loss taught Paul how fragile connection could be, and music became a place where feelings could be held safely. As a teenager, American radio offered escape and inspiration, introducing him to voices that felt distant yet deeply personal. Those sounds crossed oceans and reached a young boy who was listening closely. Long before the Beatles existed, McCartney was absorbing lessons about melody, restraint, and emotional honesty. These early experiences shaped the musician he would become, and the listener he never stopped being. Finding a musical identity. Meeting John Lennon as a teenager changed Paul McCartney's life, but it did not erase the influences he had already gathered. Together, they bonded over American rock and roll, rhythm and blues, and pop singers whose emotional delivery mattered as much as their energy. While others were drawn to raw intensity, Paul gravitated toward melody and feeling. This balance became central to the Beatles' sound. As the band evolved, McCartney's songwriting reflected a deep respect for structure and sincerity. Songs like Yesterday and Let It Be revealed a composer unafraid of vulnerability. These instincts did not come from nowhere. They were shaped by countless hours of listening to artists who proved that softness could be powerful. Paul's identity as a musician was built not only through innovation, but through careful observation of those who came before him. Influence for him was never imitation, but quiet learning. Ricky Nelson's subtle impact. Among those early influences was Ricky Nelson, whose music reached Paul long before fame ever did. Nelson's voice stood apart in the crowded world of 1950s rock and roll. Where others shouted, he confided. Where others performed bravado, he offered intimacy. For a young McCartney, that distinction mattered. Songs like Lonesome Town demonstrated that sadness could be expressed without excess, that a pop song could feel deeply personal while remaining simple. Paul has since acknowledged how that emotional restraint stayed with him. Nelson showed that vulnerability did not weaken a song, it strengthened it. Listening from Liverpool, Paul absorbed that lesson instinctively. It shaped how he approached ballads later in life, choosing clarity over complexity and sincerity over spectacle. Ricky Nelson may not have known it at the time, but his quiet style helped guide a future Beatle toward a more emotionally open form of songwriting. Fame as a gift and a trap. As McCartney's own fame exploded with the Beatles, he became increasingly aware of how success could both elevate and restrict an artist. Looking back, he has spoken with empathy about how figures like Ricky Nelson were shaped, and sometimes confined, by their early image. Nelson's rise as a teen idol brought massive visibility, but it also created expectations that were difficult to escape. Paul recognized this danger as the Beatles matured. He has noted that watching other artists struggle for creative freedom strengthened his resolve to evolve beyond public perception. The Beatles' shift from pop sensations to experimental musicians was not accidental, it was deliberate. McCartney understood that survival in music required growth. In reflecting on Nelson's career, Paul does not criticize the system, but acknowledges its pressure. His thoughts are shaped by hindsight, recognizing how easily an artist can be loved for who they were, yet resisted when they try to become more. Loss, regret, and perspective. Time brings understanding, but it also brings regret. McCartney has admitted that there were moments when he considered reaching out to artists he admired, including Ricky Nelson, but never did. Life moved quickly, careers unfolded, and opportunities quietly passed. Nelson's untimely death in 1985 deeply saddened Paul, not just as a fan, but as a fellow musician who understood the weight of expectations. He has described it as a loss of potential as much as a loss of life. These reflections are not confessions of guilt, but acknowledgments of human limitation. Even legends hesitate. Even icons delay. Paul's honesty here feels grounded rather than dramatic. He understands now that connection matters more than timing. Looking back, he speaks not with self-reproach, but with compassion. For Nelson, for himself, and for every artist navigating fame without a map, reinvention, and longevity. McCartney's later career reflects lessons learned from watching others. After the Beatles, he refused to disappear, but also refused to repeat himself endlessly. From Wings to experimental collaborations, classical compositions, and modern pop partnerships, Paul embraced reinvention. His willingness to adapt stands in contrast to the rigidity that once limited many early rock stars. Even into his 70s and 80s, he continues to tour, write, and explore. This longevity is not accidental. It is rooted in curiosity and humility. Paul has often said that staying creative means staying open. Reflecting on Ricky Nelson's journey reinforced that belief. Growth, he learned, must be protected. Artistic survival requires risk. McCartney's career demonstrates what happens when an artist refuses to be frozen in time. His continued relevance is not about chasing trends, but about honoring the impulse to evolve, something he wishes every gifted musician had the freedom to do. Legacy beyond charts and titles. At this stage of life, Paul McCartney measures success differently. Awards, records, and honors matter less than influence and connection. When he speaks about Ricky Nelson now, it is with a sense of shared humanity rather than comparison. He recognizes Nelson as part of a lineage, artists who shaped culture even when history later simplified their stories. Paul's tribute is quiet, respectful, and overdue. It reminds listeners that music history is not built only by those who lasted longest, but by those who left something honest behind. Influence does not always announce itself loudly. Sometimes it lingers in melody, tone, or feeling. McCartney's acknowledgement brings Nelson back into the conversation not as a footnote, but as a meaningful voice. In doing so, Paul reframes legacy itself, not as permanence, but as resonance. When legends speak softly. At 83, Paul McCartney's reflections carry no urgency, only sincerity. His words about Ricky Nelson are not revelations meant to rewrite the past, but reminders that admiration often lives quietly for decades. This moment is less about truth being revealed and more about appreciation finally being spoken. McCartney's story, like Nelson's, reminds us that fame is temporary, but impact is enduring. Artists shape one another in unseen ways, across oceans and generations. When Paul looks back now, he sees not competition, but connection. Two musicians, different paths, shared influence. In speaking gently about Ricky Nelson, McCartney honors the idea that music is a conversation that never really ends. Long after charts fade and headlines disappear, what remains are songs that once made someone feel understood. In the end, that is the truest legacy any artist can leave behind.